But he just got this new job, and that's been pulling him away from, staying in the area. It kind of weighs on him. It kind of weighs on him.
All right, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
All right, welcome. Thank you for all making it here safe. All praises to the Most High. High Bashim Yeshaya Rahu Wakwadash. Let's give him all his glory. At this time, let's stand. Let's all rise for the 9th hour prayer. So face our homeland. Brothers, uncover your heads. Sisters, cover your heads. Ahaya, Ba'ashem, Yeshaya, Rabuwak, Kadash, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from all evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Shemai, Sha'ala, Ahaya, Alahaya Nawa, Ahaya, Akkad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, Ahaya, is one. Amen. All right, if we just remain standing, we're going to read the 10 Commandments as customary. So if everyone please open up your Bibles to Exodus chapter 20. And the Most High spake all these words, saying, I am the Most High thy power, which hath brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Most High thy power, am a jealous power, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me, and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Most High thy power in vain. For Ahaya will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Most High thy power. In it thou shalt not do any work. Thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Most High made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Most High blessed the Sabbath day, and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land, which the Most High thy power giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Nor his manservant. Nor his maidservant. Nor his ox. Nor his donkey. Nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Amen. All right, please be seated. So at this time, as customary of our forefathers, we're going to be reading out of the law. And we ask that at this time, only baptized members come up and read 7 verses out of the law. And where do we leave off?
Genesis. Sit down. Genesis 3.
So we're picking up in Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which the Most High that power made. And he said unto the woman, Ye have God has said, Ye shall not eat of everything of the garden. And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, the Most High have said, Ye should not eat of it, neither shall y'all touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For the Most High doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together, and made themselves aprons. Amen.
Shabbat shalom, brothers and sisters. Shabbat shalom, brothers and sisters.
Shabbat shalom.
Alright, it's the spirit of giving. It's Purim season. This is Brother Yashar, tribe of Benjamin, nation of Israel, picking up at the book of Genesis, the 3rd chapter, the 8th verse. And they heard the voice of the Most High, Ahia, walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Most High amongst the trees of the garden. Verse 9. And the Most High God called unto Adam and said unto him, Where art thou? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, and I hid myself. And he said, Who told thee that thou was naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat? And the man said, The woman thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. And the Most High Ahia said unto the woman, What is this that thou hast done? And the woman said, The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. And the Most High said unto the serpent, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly thou shalt go, and the dust thou shalt eat all the days of thy life. Amen.
Shabbat shalom, fam.
Shabbat shalom.
Name is Brother Karash, tribe of Judah, nation of Israel. Just want to say, all praises to Ahia for making it through the week and blessing us with another Shabbat, and blessing us with this holy day of Purim. Picking up at Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Verse 17. And unto Adam he said, Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Verse 18. Thorns also and thistles shall they bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. Verse 19. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for out of it wast thou taken. For dust thou art, unto dust shalt thou return. Verse 20. And Adam called his wife named Eve, because she was the mother of all living. Verse 21 and last. Unto Adam also and to his wife did the Most High Power make coats of skins and clothe them. Come on.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Brother Kev, son of Jacob. Genesis 3 and 22. And the Most High Power said, Behold, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life, and eat and live forever. Therefore the Most High Power sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims and a flaming sword, which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. Verse 4, chapter 4. And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain. And he said, I have gotten a man from the Most High. And she again bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of the sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time it came to pass, and Cain brought for the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Most High.
Shalom, family. Brother Alexander, tribe of Judah. We're going to pick up at verse 6? Verse 4. And Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock, of the fat thereof. And the Most High had respect unto Abel, and to his offering. But unto Cain, and but unto his offering he did not respect. He had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. And the Most High said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth? And why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, thou shalt not be accepted. Shall thou not be accepted? If thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. Verse 8. And Cain talked with Abel, his brother. And it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother, and slew him. And the Most High said unto Cain, Where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And now art thou cursed from the earth, which have opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. Shalom.
Right. All praises, all praises. So it's a festive day today. We're celebrating the Feast of Purim. So let's first of all give the Most High all his honor, glory, and praise. Come on, y'all. Let's stand up and give him his praise. And let's get the spirit of the Most High moving in the sanctuary. Let's get the spirit of the Most High moving in the sanctuary. lesson today dealing with Purim.
I can't wait for you. Oh, yeah. They say it like that. I'm talking about the hair. The girl. I said, yo, we're not like that.
Just 1 second. What we're going to go into today is just understanding of the Feast of Purim and understanding that, where the story actually comes from. And we're going to have just a PowerPoint presentation dealing with Purim. Pardon the noise that the slideshow is making, but all praise we're going to get through it. So, Purim deals with the story of Esther, right? Esther and Mordecai, that were Jews that stayed back, in one of the provinces during the time when all the Jews were being called back to rebuild the Holy Land. And that could be documented in Nehemiah and in Ezra. But Mordecai and Esther were some of the Jews that were still dispersed and remaining in the homeland and remaining in the provinces. And this is under the Persian Empire, right? Next slide.
Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus. This is Ahasuerus, which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 120 provinces. Verse 2. That in those days, when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the palace. Verse 3. In the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces being before him. Verse 4. When he shewed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days. Verse 5. And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. Verse 6. Where were white, green, and blue hangings fastened with cords of fine linen and purple to silver rings and pillars of marble.
So he made a grand feast, right? And this feast lasted, it said, over 100 and up to 180 days, right? So this was a feast he called all the nobles, all of his rich friends, so to speak, right, in the capital, and he had this grand feast that just, this very vain feast, right? Continue.
The beds were of gold and silver, upon a pavement of red and blue and white and black marble. And they gave them drink in vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse one from another, and royal wine in abundance, according to the state of the king. And the drinking was according to the law, none did compel. For so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house that they should do according to every man's pleasure.
Now, when it says according to the law, that's not according to the Most High's law. It's just according to the decree that the king put forth in the land during this feast, right? So that word law there has nothing to do with the Most High's law, right? Continue.
Verse 9. Also Vashti, the queen, made a feast for the women in the royal house, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. Verse 10. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Nehemiah, Biztha, Harbona, Victor, and Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcas, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king. Verse 11. Then that to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look on. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains.
So the king called for the queen, right, when he's having this illustrious feast because he wanted to show her off, right? But she refused, right? She was probably a diva, she didn't feel like coming out to the king. She refused, right? So this is what happened, right? Continue.
Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Verse 13. Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner towards all that knew law and judgment. Verse 14. And the next unto him was Kashina, Sethar, Adamada, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face.
Hold on, one second, fam. We're going to try to resolve this issue of the noise real quick. So just hold it a second. Take it out there.
Is that the computer?
The HDMI. Plug it right now. Try to the right one. Make sure it's the right. Let's see if I have the call. Okay. 1 second, family. Is there any buttons on this? All right, family. Sorry for the inconvenience, but we fixed the sound issue. All right, now we can really get down to business. All right. So pick it back up at verse 13.
Verse 13. All right.
Verse 13. Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment. And the next unto him was Kashina, Sethar, Amata, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, and which sat the first in the kingdom. Verse 15.
What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to the law, because she hath not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains?
So they was concerned about it. It was like, look, what are we going to do about Vashti, because she just basically, outright refused to come before the king, right? So they was concerned because Vashti was going to start a movement, because if word got back to the other sisters that are in the provinces, they're like, look, the queen refused to come in front of the king, so what kind of problems is this going to cause, right? Continue.
Verse 16. And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti, the queen, have not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus.
So they're like, look, my wife's going to start acting up. If the queen's acting up, if she's not in order, she's supposed to be the model for the kingdom. So if she's acting up, she's out of order, then look, she didn't only do wrong to the king, she did wrong to the princes, to everybody that's viewing this, right? Continue.
Verse 17.
So it was anarchy, right? They was concerned about the revolution that might have came, right? Continue.
Verse 17. For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes. When it shall be reported, the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti, the queen, to be brought in before him, but she came not. Likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes, which have heard of the deed of the queen. Thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before the king Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she.
So because of that disobedience, they were just looking to, they said, look, let's just remove her, and let's just give her royal decree and all her stature to another, right? Since she wants to be disobedient, which shows you the power that sisters have, right? Because when you're one with your husband, right? That's the unity, right? That's the start of the family. But when there's dissension between the ranks, it causes all types of turmoil, right? Continue.
Verse 20. And when the king's decree, which he shall make, shall be published throughout all his empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both the great and small. And the same pleased the king and the princes. And the king did according to the words of Memucan.
So they were thinking that, look, since they're going to make an example out of the queen, it's going to now it's going to resonate throughout the whole land, for sisters not to be out of order when it comes to their husbands, right? This is what the thought process, right? Continue.
Verse 22. For he sent letters into all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. Chapter 2, verse 1. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti, and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Verse 2. Then said the king's servant that ministered unto him, let there be fair young virgins sought for the king.
So he was looking for a replacement now, right? He removed the queen, so now he's looking for a replacement, right? Come on.
Verse 3. And let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Hegi, the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. Verse 4. And let the maiden which pleaseth the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so.
So he was like, you know what, that's a good idea. It was like the equivalent of what the bachelor would be today, right? So they set up a situation where they had all these different eligible virgins or eligible sisters, right? and they pretty much set up a situation where they paraded in front of the king and let the king choose which one, and that would now become the new queen, right?
Verse 5. Now in Shushan the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. Verse 7. And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter.
So now this is the introduction to Esther and Mordecai, right? So this is what Mordecai now is going to place Esther into the runnings to be the new queen, right?
Verse 8. So it came to pass, when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace, to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was brought also unto the king's house, to the custody of Haggai, keeper of the women. Verse 9. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens, which were meet to be given her out of the king's house. And he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. Verse 10. Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had changed her, that she should not show it.
So he did not know that they were Jews. So she didn't reveal that to the king, because Mordecai said, "Look, keep it under wraps. They don't need to. Certain things you don't need to just come out and say." Right? Continue.
Verse 11. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house, to know how Esther did, and what should become of her. Verse 12. Now when every maid's turn was come to go in to King Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of women, for so were the days of their purifications accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for purifying of the women. Verse 13. Then thus came every maiden unto the king. Whatsoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of the woman unto the king's house. Verse 14. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the woman, to the custody of Shagaz, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name. Verse 15. Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king, she required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her.
So she was that beautiful that, and it wasn't so much an outward beauty, right? It's the spirit that just resonated with her, the way she carried herself, because sisters have an inherent beauty about themselves, especially when they're meek and modest, right? It didn't take all this type of beautification, but it's just how she carried herself. There's power in that, right? Continue.
Verse 16. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into the house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head, and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the provinces, and gave gifts according to the state of the king. Verse 19. And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. Esther had not yet shown her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought up with him.
So still, the king does not know that Esther is a Jew or Mordecai is a Jew, right? So that wasn't revealed to him, and it's going to show you why that's important later on, right? Continue.
Verse 21.
But at this time, Esther is now the queen, right? She obtained favor from the king.
Verse 21. In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth, and sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen.
So there was two gentlemen, there was two people that were looking to lay hands on the king. They was looking to kill him, right? There was a plot for the king, and these two brothers were involved. And Mordecai got wind of it, and he told Esther, right? Continue.
And Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name.
So she took and told that information to the king, and said, like, Mordecai, let me know that these two people are trying to kill you, right? Continue.
Verse 23. And when inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore they were both hanged on a tree. And it was written in the book of Chronicles before the king.
Right, so this plot was found out, and it was written, right? It was documented, right? Continue.
Esther chapter 3, verse 1.
So now time has passed now, right? This happened when Mordecai, and earlier when Mordecai was younger and Esther was much younger, right? So now a certain amount of time has passed, right? Continue.
Verse 1. After these things, did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedan, the Agagite, and advanced him, and set his seat above all the princes that were with him.
Now, it says he promoted Haman, right, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, right? And what's the significance about that, right? Well, we're gonna show you the significance about that later on. But just pay attention to who Haman is, right? Continue.
And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Verse 3.
Now, why didn't Mordecai bow, right? It's right in the commandments, right? Thou shalt not bow before anything on earth, but heaven above, right? Because man is just a man, right? Continue.
Then the king's servants, which were in the king's gate, said unto Mordecai, Why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Verse 4. Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman, to see whether Mordecai's matter would stand. For he had told them that he was a Jew.
Now he let it be known, look, I'm a Jew, right? So we operate in a certain manner, we operate in a certain fashion, right? So there's certain things that we won't, that the Most High is ruler above all. So we're not to fear man's law or to fear what men can do to you, right? Fear not who can kill the body, but fear who can take your soul, right? So he let it be known that he's a Jew, right? Continue.
Verse 5. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath. Verse 6. And he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai.
So Haman was so full of wrath that he looked to destroy all the people now that he understood. Because the thing about Haman, right, he was a Agagite, right? Who understands what lineage that descends from? Amalek, right? So Amalek is destined to just be at odds with Israel. So it's no secret, or it's no wonder that why Haman was so wroth, because it's just we're destined to go to blows with Amalek, right? And that's why we had the commandment to destroy them fully, right? And not to encourage anyone to go out and start killing Amalek, right? Because vengeance is the Lord. But this is the understanding why because they would always be at odds with Israel. Continue.
Verse 7. In the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman, from day to day and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month Adar.
So Haman casted lots, and the story behind that is he wanted to see, you know, he was given rewards for how many bodies or heads of the Jews you can come back with, right? So he pretty much had a war on the Jews, a war on that particular people, right? Continue.
Verse 8. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people. Neither keep they the king's laws. It's like, therefore, it is not for the king's profit to suffer them.
So now, look what happened here, right? Haman came to the king and said there is a certain people scattered abroad, right? He didn't identify what type of people they were, and this is gonna play out, you know, later on in the story. But he didn't necessarily identify the type of people they were, right? So keep in mind that Esther herself is a Jew, Mordecai is a Jew. He now understands that Mordecai is a Jew, so he's looking to destroy all the Jews. But instead of coming right out and saying that, he said a certain people, right? Come on.
Verse 9. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business, to bring it into the king's treasuries. Verse 10. And the king took his ring from his hand, and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy.
So it shows you the Jews' enemy, showing you their connection with Amalek, right? Continue.
And the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to thee, the people also, to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. Verse 12. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month. And there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants, and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. And the name of King Ahasuerus was written and sealed with the king's ring.
So he got the decree. He got the decree pushed. He pushed it forward, right? And what did the decree say?
Verse 13. And the letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, to take the spoil of them for a prey. Verse 14. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, that they should be ready against that day. Verse 15.
Now this seems to be a little bit much for just someone not bowing down to you, to want to destroy their entire people. So that shows you the level of just disdain that Amalek will always have for the children of Israel, right? Continue.
Verse 15. The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city Shushan was perplexed.
Because there were still a lot of Jews in the city, right?
This is the book of Esther, chapter 4, verse 1. When Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes, and went out into the midst of the city, and cried with a loud and a bitter cry. Verse 2. And came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. Verse 3. In every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, and fasting, and weeping, and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes.
Because there was a serious thing. When a king puts out a decree, that's not something he can backtrack off of, right? Because it would make him look foolish. right? So anything that the king puts forth, when a decree is put forth by the king, it's a serious matter, right? So the people of the city were perplexed, and Mordecai, he was mourning, right? Continue.
Verse 4. So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told it her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. Verse 5. Then called Esther for Hathach, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. Verse 6. And Hathach went forth to Mordecai unto the street of the city, which was before the king's gate.
So Esther wanted to know, how did this thing come about, right? So she's seeking counsel now with Mordecai. Like, what happened, right? Continue.
Verse 7. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews to destroy them. Verse 8. Also he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and to declare it upon her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto him, and to make request before him for her people.
Right, so she's saying, look, you need to go talk to the king, see what he could do, see, if he can, possibly, make some type of supplication for your people, right? Continue.
Verse 9. And Hathach came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Verse 10. Again Esther spake unto Hathach, and gave him commandment unto Mordecai, all the king's servants, and the people of the king's province, do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days.
So now Esther's in a predicament, right? Mordecai is asking her to petition in front of the king, but there was a law in place that if you go unto the king without being called by the king, you'll be put to death, right? Unless the king holds out his golden scepter, right? That's the only way you will be saved out of that situation, right? So now Esther needs to make supplication for her people, but she hasn't been called, right? Continue.
Verse 12. And they told to Mordecai Esther's words. Verse 13. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Verse 15. Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Verse 16. Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish.
Right, so Esther's like, look, fast, pray, let's get in the right type of spirit. I'm going to go and do this, and if I perish, I perish. Right, because she understands that something has to be done for her people. Right? Continue.
Verse 17. So Mordecai went his way, and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. Verse 1. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house.
Right, so now it wasn't as if Esther just came in, bust through the door, right? Was like, look, king, I need to speak to you, right? She was very crafty in her approach. She was very wise in her approach and how she just handled the whole situation, right? So she put on her royal apparel, right? She stood in the inner court, you know, of the king's house. So that it wasn't directly, so the king could actually see her, right? And look what happened. Continue.
Verse 2. And it was so, when the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight.
It's like, oh, that's Esther. I like her, right? I favored her before, right? What's going on, Esther? Right? She probably looking all distraught, like, right? Using like damsel in distress, right? And the guy just wants to, you know, he wants to make it all right. He's like, what's going on, right? Continue.
And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Verse 3. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther, and what is thy request? It shall be even given thee to the half of the kingdom.
Now pay attention to what Esther requested, right? This is wisdom here, because it would have been easy for her to come out and say, you know, everything that transpired, the whole plot against the Jews, but then she would have to reveal herself as being a Jew in that instance, right? But that wasn't revealed to the king yet. So just pay attention to how she just handled the whole situation, right? Continue.
Verse 4. And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. Verse 5. Then the king said, Cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther hath said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. Verse 6. And the king said unto Esther, At the banquet of wine.
So she asked that, you know, let's throw a banquet, let's throw a big dinner, right? And invite Haman, right? Because in the inner courts, it's easy for things to get mistreated, but she wanted a crowd, right? She wanted an audience, because then things can't get swept underneath the rug, right? Everything, she wanted all the parties that were involved to be in the same place, right? In order to now bring about, you know, some type of resolve to the issue, right? Continue.
Verse 6 from the top again. And the king said unto Esther, At the banquet of wine, What is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Verse 7. Then answered Esther and said, My petition and my request is, verse 8, If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king hath said.
Right, continue.
Verse 9. Then went Haman forth that day joyful, and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up, nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. Verse 10. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends, and Zeresh, his wife. Verse 11. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches, and the multitude of his children, and all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king.
So he got puffed up because he's now getting invited to a banquet by the king, right? So he's feeling real good within himself. He's like, look, like, king invited me to the banquet, right? Check it out. Continue.
Verse 12. Haman said moreover, Yea, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared but myself, and tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. Verse 13. Yet all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate.
So he saw Mordecai at the gate. He was still sour, right? Still sour, still holding on to that anger, right? Continue.
Verse 14. Then said Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends unto him, Let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, And tomorrow speak thou unto the king, that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made.
So she's like, look, make a gallows. You know, this thing is, Mordecai's bothering you, right? When you go to the king, ask him that they hang Mordecai there, right? So he made the gallows, right? So now look how the Most High works, right? Because how does the Most High speak with us? He speaks with us in dreams, right? In a vision, right? Continue.
6 and 1. On that night, cannot the king sleep? He commanded to bring the book of the records of the chronicles, and they were read before the king.
So the king couldn't sleep. He was having a bad dream, right? He was just tossing and turning, right? The Most High was just downloading information into him, right? And what happened?
Verse 2. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus.
Now, it's no coincidence that he just happened upon these records and saw that there was a plot to kill the king, right? Continue.
Verse 3. And the king said, what honor and dignity have been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, there was nothing done for him.
So he's asking, what happened with Mordecai? You know, what did we do for Mordecai that showed about this plot? And he said nothing was done for him, right? Continue.
Verse 4. And the king said, who was in the court? Now Haman was come into the outward court of the king's house, to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. Verse 5. And the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, let him come in.
Now, peep what's going on, right? Haman got invited. He was coming to tell the king, like, look, we need to hang Mordecai. So the king is having a bad dream, and he finds out that Mordecai saved him from a plot. So he's asking, like, who's in the court, because he wants to have something done for the person that saved his life. And the person that was in the court was Haman. So he asked for Haman to come in, right? Continue.
Verse 6. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor?
So now all this time, right, because he doesn't understand what's going on with the king, right? But in his mind, in Haman's mind, he's being called, right, by the king in his inner court. He feels like he's in the inner circle. So it's like he's almost saying, you know how if you're asking somebody, if you don't know what to do for somebody, like you say if you want to throw a surprise party for someone, right? And you're asking, but you ask that person that you want to throw a surprise party, but you ask them hypothetically, like, what would you like? If I, hypothetically, if I were to throw this, right? So Haman's thinking in his mind that he's talking about him, right? Continue.
Verse 7. The end of verse 6. Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself?
He's talking about me, right? So I'm gonna tell him this extravagant thing that I would love, right? Continue.
And Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Verse 8. Let the royal apparel be brought with which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. Verse 9. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor.
So he's thinking to himself, like, look, if the king's talking about me, it's like, this is what I want, right? So I'm gonna just kind of throw that in there, right? Continue.
Verse 10. Then the king said to Haman, make haste, and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew.
What? He said, look, everything you just said, do that for Mordecai, right? Can you now look?
Read that again.
Haman was coming to have Mordecai hang, right? Just because he wouldn't bow, right? Wanted to destroy all his people. He put the decree to destroy all his people. So now, everything that he just said, read that again.
Verse 10. Then the king said to Haman, make haste, and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken.
Let nothing fail of all that has spoken. Do everything you said to the T. Right? Continue. Can you imagine how angry Haman was at the time? He's like, I thought he was talking about me.
If you don't mind if I give like a little quick edification, that just goes to show like the power and just how amazing the Most High is. And by Mordecai looking out for the king, somebody sought to slay his life, but the Most High covered him like, nah. So it goes to show if you do good deeds and do good things, it comes back to you even in the time of distress. It's just amazing.
The bottom.
Verse 11. Then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Verse 12. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to his house mourning, and having his head covered.
So this brother was going through it, man. He was crying, weeping, just holding his head down in shame. Right? Continue.
Verse 13. And Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh, his wife, unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. Verse 14. And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains, and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared.
So he was like, babe, remember that guy I told you about? I had to just parade him around in a royal attire, leading him by horse. And she's like, look, if he's in the seat of the Jews, I mean, you're not going to prevail against that. Right? Continue.
This is the book of Esther, chapter 7, verse 1. So the king and Haman came to banquet with Esther the queen. Verse 2. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom.
Now keep in mind that decree to kill all the Jews was still in place. That wasn't even addressed yet, right? It was just the fact that the king had that awful dream, and now Mordecai was glorified and kind of bolstered up, right? Continue.
Verse 3. Then Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. Verse 4. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Verse 5. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he, and where is he, that durst presume in his heart to do so? Verse 6. And Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen.
Because he's standing right there, right? So you see the level of wisdom and just how Esther handled the situation. Had all the parties in before, but the Most High hand was all involved, right? Most High was just working all through the backdrop, right? Continue.
Verse 7. And the king arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was an evil determined against him by the king. Verse 8, then the king returned out of the palace garden into the palace of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the